Hello, Andover High School students and families. My name is Mr. Feigem, and I'm here to talk to you about the ACT exam and the score report that you just received back in your advisory class. So, just before we start, I like to just always point out that we're living in a post pandemic world. A lot of this information is changing, it's evolving. Some schools have announced their plans for upcoming years with as far as the ACT goes. Some colleges have, and some schools have just not announced it yet. So, excuse me. Please be aware that this information is evolving and changing, and to check the college's website for the most current information. One of the terms that I hear more and more and more from students, or the question that I get the most often in regards to the ACT is, what does test optional mean? And really, what it means is that students can apply to colleges without submitting their ACT score. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, some schools have already announced for the class of 2023 what their plans are, and some schools have not. So, for example, the University of Minnesota Duluth is planning to be test optional going forward, including the class of 2022 and all future classes. The U of M Twin Cities has announced that they are test optional for the class of 2022, but have not announced their plans for the class of 2023 yet. So make sure that you are checking the school's websites, like I mentioned, for that most current information. And then that leads to the natural question of like who should submit their test score. And my advice is usually anyone who feels that their ACT represents who they are as a student. It matches their GPA, it matches their test rigor, should go ahead and just submit that score. If you feel like you didn't, if your score does not represent that when you take the real ACT that we'll talk about on the next couple slides here, then you can apply as a test optional student. So for specific questions, or if you want to talk through specific scenarios, please come down and see me, make an appointment, and we can talk through what all of these options mean. This is just something I pulled from the U of M website just to show what this looks like. So this is for the class of 2022. Remember, the University of Minnesota Twin Cities has not announced their plans for next year yet for the class of 2023. But what this says is freshman applicants for fall 2022 admission are not required to submit an ACT or SAT test score. This policy change was made to ensure that every student has the opportunity to submit a complete application this year. Whether or not you choose your ACT or SAT score considered as part of your application will receive full consideration for admissions, scholarships in the University Honors Program, as well as be read as an entirety during their individual review process. The U of M also requires that you decide when applying whether or not you submit your ACT score. They don't allow you to retake it and then submit it later. Once you picked your test optional student, you are applying test optional through the entire process. So that's an important note to consider when filling out your application. Again, for specific colleges and specific examples, please check their website or come down and make an appointment, and we will go through this process for each situation. Talking or backing up a little bit, talking about the ACT in general, there's two different options for the ACT. The first one is a national ACT test date. Those can be found on those dates can be found on the website or on our Career Center, on the ACT website or on our Career Center website as well. The cost is $38 when you don't do the writing section, or $54.50 when you do the writing section. When you register, you have the option to send your score to colleges for free. You get to pick up to 4 schools. I always recommend that you do that because otherwise, if you do it after, it costs you $16 per score. And colleges will always look at your best score when considering your application. And in some cases, they even super score, where they will take your best subsection from each time you take the ACT, so your best math section, your best English section, so on and so forth, and combine that to give you a new composite score. So it is an advantage to send it if you're applying with your ACT, and make sure that you take advantage of those 4 free ones. I always tell students to make sure that they register early because locations fill up fast. The closest locations for our students to take the exam is either at Anoka Ramsey, Community College or sometimes Champlain Park High School, but those two sites definitely fill up fast. So if you know you want to take it on a certain date, make sure that you register early for that ACT. If the cost is ever an issue, we have fee waivers available. And again, any national ACT testing date, this is when you go on a Saturday morning and take the test at a site not at Andover High School. You register online through the ACT student website. Juniors at Andover High School have the opportunity to take the free state ACT on April 5th here in school. Although the registration is done during that time, all registration will be done during school, so you don't have to worry about that whatsoever. The writing section is required this day and is included as part of the free ACT. And this exam is on paper, just like the national ACT test dates are. So it's the same test as the national ones and the state one. It's the exact same setup, exact same format. The only difference is that the state covers the cost one time for juniors, and any other time or any additional time on the national test dates, families pay for that on their own. Usually, our students take the test multiple times. One of the most popular timelines for our students is to take it here in April and then to take either the June or July, with the goal of having an ACT score that they're happy with and ready to apply to colleges with for the fall of their senior year. So April and June or April and July is a great timeline, but families, that's an individual decision for you all to decide. There are 4 sections, like I mentioned, of the ACT. There is an English section that is 75 questions and students have 45 minutes to complete. I will post this this slideshow on our website so that you can read through some of these test tips. The math section is 60 questions and 60 minutes long. The reading section is 40 questions and 35 minutes long. And the science question is 40 questions, and science section is 40 questions and 35 minutes long. So it usually takes about 4 hours when students plan to take this. If they're taking the writing, it's a little bit longer, and it is 35 minutes long. It's important to remember that the 4 subsections, so English, if I go backwards here, English, math, reading, and science, those are the 4 scores that make up your composite score. Each student receives a score 1 to 36 that gives them an average of which makes up their composite. The writing is scored separately, and students receive a separate score for that section as well, on a smaller scale of 1 to 13. So writing is not a part of the composite score. It's just a separate score. And some colleges require the writing, some schools do not. I would always advise you to look at the college's website to see what is the best plan for you when determining whether or not you should retake or include the writing in your section. But remember, the one at school, it is required that you take that one. So why is this ACT important? This is something that I found from one of the national organizations for college admissions counselors, and these are the factors what they look at when considering admissions to their colleges. You can see that the most important factor, or the 4th most important factor, is the ACT, right behind their grades in AP or honors or PSEO classes, then their grades in other courses, and then their course rigor. So are they taking strenuous classes? And then the 4th one is the admissions test scores, things like the SAT or the ACT, followed up by some essays, counselor recommendations, so on and so forth. So this is all ranked by colleges. You can see the number of colleges, how many of them ranked it as considerable important, how many of them ranked it as moderate important, so on and so forth. So almost 82% of colleges said it was at least moderately or considerably important in an admissions factor. So it is something to take seriously. It is something to study for and prepare for. And I'll go through some of those prep options in the next couple slides here. Talking about those admissions factors, again, I just keep using the University of Minnesota as an example. They do what is called a holistic review, where they consider primary and secondary factors. So the primary factors are going to be the depth and rigor of coursework. Students typically exceed the university's high school requirements. So for example, in our high school, students need 3 years of science and 3 years of math to graduate. Students at the University of Minnesota typically exceed that minimum, so they might have 4 years of science and 4 years of math. So they take physics their senior year, and they take a fourth level of math their senior year, or an additional level if they're already through that fourth level. We do rank our students, so GPA and class rank is also considered a primary factor, as well as their ACT or SAT scores when applying with that test score. Some of those other factors then that are considered are things like all of the classes they've taken, community service and leadership, and you can see that list on their website, and I included it here below. But primary factors are always going to be the academic coursework. The secondary factors are going to be those other things: their community service, their letters of recommendation, any of those outside circumstances that maybe a student has had to overcome, or the ability to add more to the University of Minnesota's freshman class. So being a first generation college student or having that military service, so on and so forth. So any questions on this? I'm happy to explain this further, but this is, again, just an example that I wanted to make sure to include when making your decisions on the ACT and planning for college applications the fall of senior year. So each student received a handout with their scores. So the student report, when looking at this, the one side shows the student's response in capital letters. The letters that will be in red if the student chose the incorrect answer, and the lowercase letter below the red letter is the correct response to the question. So students all were able to keep their answer book, or excuse me, their test booklet. This is a great resource in going through and double checking to see where students maybe had an incorrect answer on their score report. So if you're someone who all of a sudden at the end of their test, one of the things to remember is that students are, a blank answer is considered wrong. So it's always great to complete each subsection. If you see on your score report that you had multiple questions wrong towards the end of your exam, it might be that you ran out of time, and that should be something you focus on during your prep, when you're preparing for the April exam. Each score report also includes a raw score, a scale score, the percentile rank, and then your composite score. So you can see what each of those mean here on this slide. Besides that, there also is the benchmarks. These ACT benchmarks are important because they help in a couple different ways. First, they show you kind of your percent chance of getting a B or C in college level coursework in that current area. But also they help colleges use these scores to help determine, are you able to enter right into college level English, college level math, and don't have to take what's called the remedial class. So some colleges will require an AccuPlacer test. Students would take that AccuPlacer and then they would use that as a placement into which freshman level classes that they take. If you score high enough on your ACT, you're able to skip that AccuPlacer test and go right into that college level class. So that is what the ACT benchmark is on the sheet that you see. So this I just thought was interesting. I wanted to compare. Remember, students took this practice ACT in the fall of their junior year. These averages come from the spring. So if your number is lower than that, I wouldn't say like that you're behind or that you should panic. But really, this is just it's a different timeline. Students have a whole nother year of prep work of just taking their regular coursework to raise their scores as well. The first column here is the Andover High School composite average, and then the far column compares it to Minnesota as a whole. So typically Andover students have done really well. We have almost 95% of our students take the ACT in the spring. So it's a really high number, and our scores have been strong. And I think part of that is because some of the prep stuff that we have available for our students to get them ready for those tests in April and June or whenever they decide to take it. Those prep options include some free resources, things like Naviance, and we have a bunch of test prep books available for students to check out. What I always tell students is before you buy anything, come see me because we probably have it for free available in the Career Center. So Naviance has 8 full-length practice tests. It has some built-in lessons. So if you're looking at your score and you're like, gosh, I really need to focus on the science section, there are some science lessons built into their Naviance program, as well as flashcards and some study games and whatnot that the students can use. It's a really, really great tool. It's something that ACT sells for $275. Our students get it for free as part of their Naviance program. We have brand new ACT prep books that you students can check out just like they would a library book. We have some free resources available on our website. The one that I always like to highlight is this crackact.com. It just has a bunch of old practice tests and practice questions available that there's no registration or anything. And students can take advantage of on this website. And then, of course, there are a lot of paid resources. As I get these things sent to me, I try to update our website with new materials. So check back often. Also, you can just go right to their website. This Prep Star is one that we've had great success with. Our students have had great success with. It's through community education. So yeah, any of this stuff, if you need more information, definitely reach out and I would be happy to share this. Last but not least, I like to always just show this slide here. This is Andover High School's top 20 colleges by the number of applications. So Anoka Ramsey, number 1, U of M, number 2, Gus Davis, number 9, Concordia Moorhead, number 19, and Anoka Technical College, number 20. This is the average GPA of those students that were accepted, and this is the average ACT score. So you can see, again, these are averages. These aren't minimums. These are Andover High School students that have gone to these schools, what their GPA was during high school, and what their ACT score was during high school. So if you have any questions, again, I'd be happy to share this with you, but also it is posted on our website for you to use as a resource. Thank you for your time. I know I tried to do that quick to keep it moving along there, but if I'd be happy to review further. You can reach out with any questions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.